What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Web3 SQL Weekly number 7. This is part 2 of the video. Part 1 that explains all of like the blockchain concepts are over here. We talk a lot about like how we chose what contracts and tables to look at and some things about on and off chain signing. So check it out. Otherwise, we're going to get into the query on cohort retention now. Okay, so this is the query we're going to recreate. So let's open it in a new tab. Dune SQL is our default engine now. Hope you enjoy using it. Let's start with getting our base of users. All right, so I know that I need the month of when each address was active. So I need from nft.trades. I know that there was a buyer column and I know that there was a seller column. So we're going to do a union in a second. But I want to do where blockchain equals chain and project equals project. Default value for chain is just going to be Ethereum. For project is going to be Opensea. And I'm going to do just buyer as user. If you remember from week 4, this is the same thing we did there. Okay, I just want like for a given month was a user active. That's all I care about. But I need this for both the buyer and seller side. So I copy this over and I do seller as user. So this is going to give me a table basically just with all of the buyers and sellers of a given month, but I need to make it distinct just so it's easier to work with. And if a user traded multiple times, they don't show up multiple times. So this gives me my base, and we'll just take a look at this real quick just to make sure it runs. And you can just see here, we're basically literally just taking a month and the user that was active in that month or the wallet. We don't really care if they're a buyer or seller or not in this analysis. Next, there's a few things we needed to do. We need to assign each user to a cohort. We need to get total size of cohorts. And then we need to get for a given month, which cohort addresses were active, then divide by total size. So then that'll give us like, okay, for a given month, cohort from June 2021, what percent of them were still active? So let's start with the first one. I'm going to call this user cohort. And we're basically going to take the minimum month for a given user. So this is just going to give us, okay, for an address, when did they start using it? Next, we want total users in cohorts. This is simple. I'm going to call it cohort size. And I'm going to say select cohort count from user cohort. Group by 1. So this will now give me for each cohort how many users are in the cohort, and for each user what cohort did they start in. And I'm going to call this total size. Okay, so we have these first two done. Now we get to the slightly more confusing part. So first, we're going to call this active by cohort. And I'm going to say, okay, I want from base B, I want to left join on user cohort. Let's call it UC on uc.user equals base.user. So now I can say, okay, there's b.month, and I want the count of users who are active by user cohort in a given month. Let's just take a look at what we're looking at here. I can see for the month of September 2020, the number of addresses who are still active from the October 2018 cohort was 21. But we want the total addresses as well, because we want a retention rate. But it doesn't help us to see the months as the actual months. We just care if it's the first month after, or the second month after, or the third month after. what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in a subquery. And we're going to take the cohort still, the month still, and we're going to do a row number over partition by cohort. I don't need these aliases anymore. Order by month ascending as months. And I'm going to keep total active in here. Sorry, it should be active addresses. So now you can see, oh, for this cohort, every single month that passes, the months increase. For 2019 July, it counts up month by month. You'll see later that month 2 should actually be month 1, but we'll get into that. Don't worry too much about it right now. Okay, so now let's actually calculate the retention. So if I want the retention base, I'm going to take active by cohort. I'm going to join in, what did I call this up here? Cohort size on cohorts. And what I want the cohort month. I want the total size. And I don't want this in this weird, like, long row, 2000 row form. I want it in this column form. So I need to pivot things. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to basically put each, like, month and, like, retention rate into a dictionary, like a map dictionary. And then I'm going to create a column for each value of the dictionary, or like for each key of the dictionary. If this doesn't make sense, don't worry too much about it. You can learn about map ag and other kind of like fancy Trino functions in the Trino documentation. It's just a dictionary of, I'm going to take months, and retention rate is going to be active addresses divided by total size. And there's sometimes weird behavior with percentages when we're dividing things, so I'm going to cast these both to double just so I don't basically see weird zeros. And we're going to call this retention key. It's an aggregate function, so I'm going to group by 1, 2. So let's just give you a simple view of what this looks like. So if I go retention base, and I take total size, and then I take retention key, let's say 1, retention key 2. Actually, some of them won't have retention key 2 yet. So let's just take this. I'm missing a parentheses somewhere. Oh, let's take that out. All right, so here, you'll see that the retention rates are all 1, right? Because month 1 was the actual first month of the cohort, so they should all be 100% retention rates. So technically, month 1 should be 2 as month 1. However, the most recent month won't have a month 1, so this would be like out of index. So I need to have try as this fancy function in Trino SQL that basically says, hey, if any sort of error happens, just return null. So if you want to try except in Trino, you basically just do a coalesce. Hey, if this fails, like some other value, right? I'm not going to put 0 here. I'm basically going to just leave it as this. So now if I just copy this down all the way, and you just give me a second here. I'm going to save you some time, and we're going to have this, and we don't want the data all the way from 2018, so let's just say where the cohort was from some amount of months ago, and you'll see I do this a lot. Let's say 24 months, like a year. And let's order by cohort ascending. And we also don't want this weird year-hour thing here, so let's take a substring of cohort for just the year and date. This is a timestamp, so let's cast it as varchar. And this gives us our retention rates, right? It's a little ugly. You can see that there's some formatting that can be done. But essentially, what you get if you just change these names and then add this 0.0% kind of truncation is you get a much cleaner chart. All right, it shows you, okay, back in April, they started with 18% month one retention. It eventually went up to 60, and now it's back down to 24, like roughly 24%. This month doesn't really count because it's still only 9 days into the month, so this number is meaningless. You can see the cohort size as well. If you just plot cohort and total size, the number of new users has basically flatlined to about 100K a month of new users, which checks out with week 4's data. And here's the big one. Here we took the cohort, and on the bottom, so these are all of the cohorts, and we're taking their month 1, month 5, and month 10 retention. Note that like the most recent data for all of these is going to be lower. It's going to be lower because, same reason as earlier, the month has just started. So these numbers are all going to be lower. So this dip that we see is only because it hasn't been enough time yet. So you can take the pre-dip cohort to say, okay, month 1 retention, it's been around 25%, basically since like 2021 October. Month 5 retention has stabilized around, let's say, 13%, basically, and month 10 retention is around 10% stabilized. It's come down a bit, but you can start to get a sense of, okay, roughly after the first month, 30% of users will stick around. By the 5th month, 12% will stick around. By the 10th month, 8% will stick around. And it's pretty flat, which can be seen as a good thing of just, okay, there is basically some length of time where users are basically forever sticky. And this is just a good way of getting a sense of over time, especially if there's airdrops involved, you're going to see very different values here. And this is something I actually encourage you to look at for our bonus question, is try and do the same thing with Uniswap or Balancer. It's basically the same query, except you won't be using nft.trades, you'll be using a different table. Try to find that table, work it out, tag me on Twitter, AndrewHong5297, with your results, and I look forward to your insights. See you next week. Don't forget to submit and vote for what query should be next on the Canny board. Take care.